My name is Marilyn Elling. I live 3 miles from the plant, 2.5 actually, in Cortland Manor. I have been coming to these meetings for 15 years now, and nothing has changed. We sit and we hear platitudes, and nothing has changed. I came here tonight specifically with a list of questions in the order of saving time. I've written them out. I would like not to go into them, but I would like to give them to you. If I give them to you, will I receive written answers in a timely fashion? Will I receive timely answers? Will I receive answers to questions as a member of the public? I am asking this reason.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. Then I can move on to the next thing on this agenda, my agenda, which happens to be exemptions. It's not just the Indian Point Safe Energy Coalition. It's not just Clearwater. It's not just Riverkeeper. It is the Union of Concerned Scientists who bring together really sound, positive, scientific information, because they're not against nuclear power, who say the exemptions in Indian Point are keeping the plant from operating on a design basis. And you want to take those exemptions and make them part of what you're relicensing without even looking at them. We can't even get a list of exemptions. I would think that with your record keeping, you would simply be able to go back over the history of the plant, list the exemptions, and let us know what they are. We cannot get them. They're not on Adams. They're not available through any other system. And those exemptions need to be looked at. Not according to Marilyn Elling, according to the Union of Concerned Scientists. And I don't understand why you can't do it. And I would like to see a list of exemptions to that plant from day one, and how, rather than looking at things piecemeal, how that impacts the overall design of that plant that you want to relicense for another 4 years. It's impossible to think. My last point.
Thank you.
My last point has to do with the evacuation plan, something that we've been told the NRC has nothing to do about. Well, last night I read an article from the Omaha Herald that said back in December, the NRC and FERC, FERC, passed a new weakened down, watered evacuation plan. You passed it. You went through this for 3 or 4 years looking at it. Who knew? Nobody except you, the industry, and evidently FERC. Nobody has known about this, and you dare, in post-Fukushima, you dare to weaken and have fewer evacuation drills. You say we don't need things to be looked at because the industry says it's too costly. What does that make you but whores to the industry? No, I'm not done yet. A long time ago in another century, wagon makers, buggy makers, and blacksmiths all went extinct. And that is what needs to happen with Indian Point. It's old, it's dangerous, it's unnecessary, and if you work there, you got a good union job, good for you. You do not deserve that job in a way that endangers 17 million people. It's not a job factory, it's a nuclear power plant, and we need to shut it down, and we need to call right now for a whole new NRC. All the commissioners there need to be withdrawn. We need a whole new NRC, and it needs to go right down the line till it gets to Region 1. Region 1 could not even tell the commissioners, this is not a good idea to secretly pass a new evacuation plan, to not let any of the stakeholders know, to put it in place where nobody could know and say, you've got a new evacuation plan, live with it. You couldn't tell them, they can't tell us, and it needs to be shut down, and you need to quit, and we need an NRC that protects public health and safety.
Thank you.
Your mission one sucks.
Thank you. Let me make a comment here.
Make a comment. Thank you.
I'm John Bosca from NRC headquarters. We do have a list of all the exemptions that have been granted to Indian Point, and we will provide a list to Ms. Ellie.
Thank you.
Put it on the website. Put it on the website.
They are available on our website, and we'll make sure they're posted on the Indian Point webpage.
Thank you. Okay, and then I did want to address, and I appreciate your passion, Ms. Ellie, but you have, I think, some erroneous information. Back in 2005, the NRC, in conjunction with FEMA, not FERC, but FEMA, the Federal Emergency Management Agency, took upon itself the opportunity to develop new rulemaking associated with emergency preparedness. A lot of this was generated from the events of 9/11, where we determined that there were some things that needed to be upgraded. The emergency preparedness rules in this country had not been upgraded since they were initially issued back in the 70s. A very long, time-consuming process that involved multiple interactions in public forums associated, thank you, put those signs down, associated with the rulemaking. Public meetings that were webcasted across the country. We had hundreds and hundreds, and matter of fact, even thousands of comments on the proposed regulations from all stakeholders.
That's a lie.
It's not a lie.
It's a lie for this part of the country.
No, that's
there was,
incorrect.
and you passed it, you put it in the Federal Register, December the 4th.
Please put that sign down. You can't do that. That's disrespectful. Please don't do that.
December the 24th, Christmas Eve, that's when it went in the Federal Register. Now, on March the 5th, we had top people in emergency first responders. We had, no, you will not. They don't need me, they can hear me. I don't need them. We had people on March the 5th, we had them, and they gave a report. None of them knew about this. We had people from Japan coming, and they talked to each other. They talked to each other about what made it safe. Nothing that you have in your new rules makes it safe. Okay. And if it wasn't FERC, then go talk to the Omaha Herald, because they're the ones that talked about it. They broke the story from AP. There has been nothing about a change of rules in this part of the country, because I follow it, I watch it, I look for it. You didn't do it.
Okay, well, first of all, you and I will badly disagree on that because you are wrong. But
show me when.
I would like
show me.
Please, let him respond. Give me a chance. We have our emergency preparedness expert from Region 1 here, Steve Barr. He and I, or hopefully maybe you could spend some time talking him out there, and he'll be able to explain to you the whole process and where the public engagement was. It was substantial. More than any other rulemaking, I believe, that this agency has done in the past 20 years.
Who in this audience was part of that? Who in this audience heard about it?
Nobody!
Who heard about it? It's not in your culture.
My name is Yuko Tonohira, and since it doesn't seem like you guys, 6 of you up here, care about public health, I want to ask you questions. What sushi place do you like to eat at in New York? Do you know what's going on in Japan? And just imagine what would happen to primary industry and what organic farming and fishery and dairy production turns into what is supposed to nurture for your well-being, suddenly turns into what is bad for you. That's what the people are going through in Japan, and we all need to be aware of it and move towards something. You know, we want our kids to, and their kids to be living, you know, doing something better than what we're doing right now. Working better jobs than what nuclear power plants workers are doing right now, irradiated, you know, all these hours. So that's all I want to say.
Well, thank you.
My name is Dorothy Forcina. I'm the managing director here from the Westchester County Association. Our membership is a diverse group of large, mid-sized, and small businesses in Westchester County. Each of our members understand the clear link between energy costs and prosperity. Businesses and industry need to know that they are going to have affordable and competitively priced power. Like all businesses, our members take electric rates into account when looking at their bottom lines and what their operating expenses are going to be. High energy costs, disruptions in energy reliability, reduced hiring, and reduced opportunities in Westchester County happen with higher energy rates. Indian Point, I've listened to everybody.
Please be respectful. Finish your statement. Finish your
Indian
statement.
Point's continued operation is essential to Westchester County's economic growth and prosperity. Without the plant, there would be higher prices and a decrease in grid reliability. This would send out a distressing message that New York is hostile to business, making it more difficult to attract or retain companies in Westchester. We support the plant's continued operation and urge the policymakers, the NRC, and others to support Indian Point also. Thank you.
Well, I'd like to thank you guys for being here. I know it's a tough job being up here and hearing everything. I am a Democrat, an Obama supporter. I live in Bedford Hills. I run the largest charity that takes care of children with autism in the United States. I'm the executive director for advancement for Easter Seals New York and Southern Connecticut. And there's been a lot of heated conversations and debates here today. But I want to just make it really clear: those guys, Union 1 and 2, show up at Thanksgiving and Christmas, and they give presents to little kids who don't get presents from other places. And our second largest funder in Westchester, with all the money that's here, is Entergy. So, and I am a proud recipient of their funding. And look, I listen to all of you, and just hear me on the side.
Make your statement, Mr. McGrath.
When I look around, I see a lot of really open-minded, caring people that really do not understand the people who are on the other side. You should really get to know them the way I've gotten to know them and watch them care for the children who have disabilities in this neighborhood, and it's really an amazing thing. So just take the venom out of where you are, because these are good, caring citizens. Thank you very much for being here, and thank you guys for really wanting to for taking care of all the children that these kids will not take care of.
My family has owned property 5 miles from Indian Point, well, 3 miles as the nuclear radiation may drift. And for nearly a century, we love the area. The whole discussion, by the way, I might add, about whether you like the people that do this work, they are good people, that has nothing to do with it. What confronts us here is a plant in desperate need of serious regulation, and I feel that it's not Energy's fault, it's not the fault of the people that are working there, I feel it rests on you.
Yes.
This plant is, if relicensed, will be relicensed under the standards to which it was built, and not to the standards that new plants would be required to meet. We have not heard the problems addressed about evacuation, about spent fuel rods. I know this is a national problem. Nobody's got a solution for spent fuel rods that the country can agree on. This is a state in which our country is just dithering, and it's causing us all huge problems. But as long as those fuel rods are sitting where they are a threat, and we keep on piling more rods in, even though the storage is over capacity. I am not against nuclear power per se, but it becomes unsafe when you do not insist that the full scope of the problems be addressed. It is on your shoulders, NRC. And if you don't do it, I'm far and away in the shut it down camp.
Thank you.
My name is Gary Shawn. I live about 5.5 miles from the plant, and I've been coming to these meetings for about a decade. Almost exactly a year ago, on May 14th, 2011, the Journal News reported that Indian Point quote, Indian Point gets fixed list.
Closer to the mic, Gary.
That Indian Point gets fixed list from the NRC, unquote, and I have a few questions about that. The Journal News reported that, quote, hydrogen containment devices that were supposed to be tested every other year haven't been tested for 5 years, unquote. Well, how would you rate the NRC inspectors in terms of their oversight of operator compliance with regulations? Have those hydrogen devices been inspected by now? And I'd like to know whether those hydrogen devices are actually the same hydrogen vents that are in the spent fuel storage at Indian Point, which are exactly the same as the ones that failed in Fukushima. So I'd like to know that. Secondly, the Journal News reported that firefighting equipment was placed in locations that were not seismically designed or protected from quakes. I presume that equipment has been moved, but how would you rate your assessment of risk if you guys let that firefighting equipment sit in seismically vulnerable areas for who knows how long? The newspaper reported that there was an insufficient amount of firefighting equipment to handle a multi-reactor event. Yeah, I know. Oh, come on. What's the likelihood that that could possibly happen in a technologically advanced country like the US or Japan, that we would have a multiple reactor catastrophe? The newspaper reported that carbon dioxide tanks used for firefighting were not seismically certified. How would you rate the NRC in terms of enforcing operator compliance? Last year, and that's all about the article that was written, but last year this NRC panel was asked how many regulatory exemptions had been granted to Indian Point, and no one could answer. I'm very glad to hear that there will be a list available to stakeholders so we can see exactly how much that was. But I'd like to talk about one in particular, and it's been referenced already. It's the reduction of the HEMIC fire wrap protection from a standard of 1 hour to 24 minutes. I have an Inspector General's letter to the NRC regarding that. It says that, and I quote, the OIG, the Office of Inspector General, learned that in February 2001, NEI advised the NRC that there was insufficient evidence to indicate a safety concern that would warrant an industry initiative. So the NEI, the main lobbyist of the industry, is telling the NRC, the people who are charged with our public health and safety, what they should be doing, rather than you telling them what they should be doing. I find that absolutely absurd. In terms of the HEMIC testing, and I quote, specifically, the report stated that HEMIC exceeded the temperature limit of 325 degrees Fahrenheit between 13 and 42 minutes, depending on where temperature was measured on the test assembly. So once again, the NRC, the same guy who brought us to the brink of breach of containment at Davis-Besse, Sam Collins, your predecessor, shepherded through another exemption. We all know that no nuclear plant was designed for this amount of long-term nuclear waste storage, and we know that regulations have been revised to allow more dense packing of the assemblies. I'm almost done, Carl. I'll be done in a minute. And that there's dense packing of the assemblies than original design basis. Why isn't the NRC demanding that operators move all waste that is cool enough to be moved into dry cask storage? This is a simple step that would reduce the magnitude of a release if the unexpected happens, and it can be done. And finally, why is the NRC mentality one of, it's probably good enough, rather than let's do everything we can think of to make this publicly traded business that makes $2 million a day as safe as it can possibly be? What are you guys doing? How are you discharging your primary responsibility of protecting the health and safety of the public?
Thank you.
I actually am the Senior Resident Inspector at Indian Point Unit 2, and I did identify the hydrogen recombiner issue that you talked about through independent inspection. After I identified that, the licensee had to go in and inspect and test those hydrogen recombiners. After they did the testing, the hydrogen recombiners did pass the test, so there wasn't an impact on plant safety. However, it's something we identified and it's something the licensee had to address.
But it was something that was supposed to be tested every other year, and it wasn't tested for 5 years. Whose responsibility was it to make sure that that equipment was tested according to regulations? If it wasn't yours, whose was it? The operator? And where was the fine? What's the answer?
Yeah,
what's the answer?
I'll just make one statement there, Gary. The responsibility for operating a nuclear power plant safety is in the hands of the licensee. It's their responsibility. It's the NRC's responsibility through our inspection and oversight process to assure that the licensees are doing what they need to do. What Michelle described is an example through our inspection process where we found an issue that the licensee wasn't doing what it's supposed to do.
So it was only 150% longer than it should have been.
Right,
Thank you.
Not suitable, we have to leave that violation to them.
So you're not doing your job.
I think the point here is that
You're not doing
it
your job.
did run long, and that's what we identified. But they did ultimately test them, and they did pass. They would have
Those
performed their
lucky.
function.
Those
So it
lucky.
was the safety impact.
Thank you. Joe Ryan.
Yeah, Joe Ryan. Who's Joe Ryan? Well, 3,211 seventh graders knew me. I spent 32 years teaching outside the nuclear power plant. I moved here in 1969 from the Adirondacks, and I'm still an active Verplank firefighter where the plant is located. It is our fire district. I have trained with the people at Indian Point, and I volunteered my time, and I want to look around this room because you're here to get information. And I've heard a lot of scientific studies tonight. I've even heard a wonderful song. You know? Something about the towers and stuff. Yeah, I know all about that because my fire company and I were sent down there that day because we were well trained. The point you need to understand is the culture here. And that plant was built by craftsmen who care, and I know, a lot of them are dead now. Now I'm going to laughing over there, but you know, sometimes the laughter, you wonder, because I'm a volunteer. And I drive the ambulance into that Indian Point power plant, and I'm going to tell you something, they take security really seriously. So you need to understand that side of the culture. And also, a lot of those plant workers volunteer in our fire company. And they live there, just like I do. And that's what counts. And I've heard a lot about safety tonight, and everybody concerned, and of course we are. I know exactly how many firefighters died at Chernobyl. I was around, but I wasn't there, I was here. And I've got a pretty good, it was 9 actually, directly done. Okay, that's one. One more minute. You know what? You need the information. The culture of that plant is safety. The culture of that community is pride in that plant. And what bothers me about the abuse you've been put to tonight in this democratic process is that you also have to understand that a lot of people who talk and wave papers and yell about safety don't volunteer in their fire company. They don't volunteer in the ambulance.
Speak for yourself!
Baloney!
There's a few, isn't that wonderful? We could use a few more. Bottom line is, I don't envy your decision. My personal position, having lived there since 1969, and taught the families and the communities around there, and volunteered there, that it's a safe plant. The people at that plant really give a damn, and it should remain open.
Thank you.
I'm Joseph Diaveria. I teach political science at William Patterson University, and I had come prepared to speak in very general terms about nuclear power and Indian Point in particular, and that is that I stand in opposition to renewal of this license. But having heard some of the testimony and some of the arguments made this evening, I'm particularly taken by some of the arguments made on behalf or in support of renewal, that it should be that the license should be renewed on purely economic grounds, that somehow not to do so would be painful to business. Now, I'm just fascinated by that. And to those who would, I mean, I can certainly understand the consternation of the workers here who see this as a bread and butter issue, and while we would not agree on this serious issue, I can certainly understand they're taking the positions that they have taken. But my question to those who would argue in purely economic terms, you know, that the plant should be, that it should remain open and the license should be renewed, my question is as crude as it is simple, and that is, how the hell do you stand being around yourselves?
Please, make your statement.
Well,
Because the plant is safe!
Make your statement.
the plant is safe. Well, in any case, my question then is, you know, to the commission as well as to all here gathered, is it worth the price of this entire metro area being rendered uninhabitable for 1,000 years? Thank you.
Thank you.
I have never come to a hearing about Indian Point before.
Please identify yourself.
Donna Gould is my name. I live in New York City.
Thank you.
I have great respect for the people who've been coming year after year. However, I have opposed nuclear energy since 3 Mile Island, and I was part of the movement against nuclear energy at that time. I wanted to say, in relation to the workers at the plant, who I do believe are good people, that if a plant in Japan were being considered to be shut down, that the workers there, believing that they were safe, would have argued to keep it open. Indian Point is old, expensive, dangerous, and unnecessary. It's an accident waiting to happen, as somebody said, a time bomb on the Hudson. There is no possibility of evacuation in case of accident. As I said, I demonstrated after 3 Mile Island. I know about Chernobyl and Fukushima. In every case, people were reassured that they were safe. But the unexpected, the statistically impossible, the far-fetched does and can happen. No changes can make this plant fail-safe. We don't need it. We have enough surplus energy to meet demand through 2020, according to the Assembly report from the January hearing. Why should the NRC renew the license of this aging plant 25 miles from New York City with a terrible safety record when we don't need it? The NRC must do its job as regulators to protect the safety of the people, not the nuclear industry. Shut it down.
Thank you.
I'm Carl Lundgren. I'm the chair of the Bronx County Green Party. I'm on the steering committee of the grassroots activist organization Shut Down Indian Point Now. I'm a member of the Environmentalist Solidarity Working Group of Occupy Wall Street. And I'll be the Green Party candidate for New York State Senate in District 34, covering parts of the Bronx and Westchester. I'm not here to speak rationally and present facts, figures, and statistics designed to sway your decision on whether or not to decommission or relicense Indian Point. In fact, I'm not here to try to convince the commissioners of anything at all. These hearings are more an exercise in futility than of any practical utility. I'm here to speak to my fellow citizens and neighbors to urge them to demand the closing of Indian Point through our elected officials. And if they're unable or unwilling to represent us, then we'll decommission them on election day. No, I'm not here to speak rationally. I'm here as an irrational, emotional, and fearful human being who knows instinctively when danger is present and disaster imminent. A disaster at Indian Point isn't just a possibility. As time goes on, it becomes inevitable. It ain't about the if, it's all about the when. This facility needs to be shut down immediately. I read an article online just last evening from a publication out of Bristol, England, talking about the decommissioning in 2008 of the Oldbury nuclear facility. The article talked about how even with the shutdown, it will be nearly 100 years before the site will actually be cleaned up and permanently closed. Good news for the economy and the workers who are wondering about what they're going to do. There will be jobs at the plant for generations to come. That's right. I continue to be baffled by the cognitive dissonance exhibited by people in government and industry when it comes to health and safety, as if only theoretical problems exist and they themselves will be spared in the event of a real emergency, as if they and their loved ones won't be affected. Are you all so enchanted with these facts and figures that I detest so much that you've lost your basic humanity? I, for one, don't think the loss or threat to even one human life is acceptable for any reason, and especially for no other purpose than profit. The threat to the environment, no matter how improbable, is not impossible, and therefore must not be acceptable. Regulations and laws, safeguards, and evacuation plans are meaningless in a society where litigation can render them impotent, while real dangers and threats continue to mount. So now that I've spoken as the irrational human I am, you and the elected officials and the various rational organizations can return to your wrangling, headbutting, and compromising while the ticking time bomb in our backyards continues its countdown. My hope is that ordinary citizens, the 99%, the irrational, will no longer find this way of doing business acceptable and will begin to demand more of all of you, as well as ourselves, to do more for our own health, safety, sustainability, and survival.
Thank you.